They say graveyards are places of rest, but some don't rest at all. Scattered across the United Kingdom are burial grounds that time has forgotten, but something else hasn't. Places where footsteps echo behind you, where laughter rings out from empty corners, where the dead whisper just beyond the veil. Tonight, we're taking you on a spine-chilling journey through some of the most haunted graveyards in the UK. Highgate Cemetery, London. Hidden deep within the heart of London, there lies a place where the veil between life and death is disturbingly thin. Highgate Cemetery, an eerie oasis of shadowed tombstones and ancient trees, stands as one of the most notorious and haunted burial grounds in the world. It's a place where the past refuses to remain buried, and the echoes of those long gone continue to whisper through the wind. On a quiet day, if you listen carefully, you can almost hear the voices of the dead still calling from the depths of this forgotten city of the dead. The cemetery, founded in 1839, was designed to be a final resting place for the elite of Victorian society, an oasis of death that would offer both solace and prestige. Its landscape, a mix of Gothic grandeur and natural decay, is dominated by towering mausoleums, crumbling gravestones, and centuries-old tombs. As you walk through the cemetery, the smell of damp earth and decaying leaves fills the air. The rustling of trees above seems almost like a whispered conversation, and the distant hum of London's busy streets feels like a world away. Here, time is suspended, and the world outside seems to vanish entirely. But beneath this serene surface, there lies a creeping sense of something other. Highgate Cemetery is no ordinary burial ground. As the years have passed, stories of the strange and supernatural have emerged, accounts of ghostly sightings, cold spots, and an unnerving presence that lingers long after the last visitor has gone home. Some say that Highgate is one of the most haunted places in London, a place where the dead refuse to stay in their graves. It wasn't always this way. Highgate Cemetery, in its early days, was designed as an idyllic resting place, a park-like atmosphere where the dead could rest in peace, far from the overcrowded burial sites of the city. It was the grandest cemetery of its time, meant to provide a tranquil escape for the mourners of London's upper class. Among its famous residents are figures like the poet Christina Rossetti and the scientist Michael Faraday. These prestigious souls were laid to rest in elaborate tombs, their lives immortalized in the stone that marked their graves. But as the years passed and the cemetery fell into disrepair, it began to take on a darker, more unsettling character. The cemetery's neglected state became a breeding ground for rumors. The cracks in the stone, the overgrown ivy, the shifting shadows, all seemed to suggest that something hidden was beginning to stir beneath the surface. It was in the 1970s that Highgate Cemetery's reputation took a sinister turn. What began as local folklore grew into something more, a legend that would forever stain the cemetery's history. It was then that reports surfaced of a shadowy figure, a tall, gaunt figure, moving silently between the graves, its glowing eyes flickering in the moonlight. Some residents spoke of an unnatural presence in the cemetery, an overwhelming sense of dread that settled over them whenever they ventured near its gates. And then the unthinkable began to happen. Animals were found bloodless and abandoned at the foot of gravestones. Cryptic symbols appeared on the ground, scratched into the dirt as though something or someone was trying to leave a message for those who dared to listen. People began to whisper about a vampire, a creature from the depths of legend who was said to prowl the cemetery at night, searching for its next victim. As the rumors spread, so did the reports of terrifying experiences. Paranormal investigators, eager to uncover the truth, made their way into the cemetery. One of the most famous accounts came from David Farrant, a psychic investigator, who in 1970 ventured into the cemetery in search of answers. He claimed to have seen the figure, a tall, dark silhouette, standing at the entrance to a crypt, its eyes burning red in the darkness. The air around him grew thick with dread, and as he turned to flee, the feeling of being watched followed him, as if the shadows themselves were alive. Farrant's encounter sparked further media attention, and soon Highgate Cemetery became a hot spot for paranormal enthusiasts, eager to experience its eerie energy for themselves. But it wasn't just the sightings that kept people coming back. Those who ventured into the cemetery after dark reported strange sensations, an oppressive weight that seemed to press down on them, an invisible force that seemed to pull at their very souls. Some felt their bodies grow cold, as though the temperature had dropped drastically, despite the warmth of the evening. Others heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps behind them, slow, deliberate steps that grew louder as they walked, only to turn around and find no one there. The strange activity seemed concentrated in certain areas of the cemetery. The West Cemetery, with its Gothic arches and labyrinthine paths, became a focal point for the eerie happenings. Visitors reported cold spots in this section, areas where the temperature dropped so dramatically that their breath became visible in the frigid air. The Egyptian Avenue, a grand stone pathway lined with tombs, became a place where strange phenomena were frequently reported. Some claimed to have seen shadowy figures moving between the monuments, their forms shifting and fading, as if they existed in a world beyond our own. And perhaps the most unsettling accounts came from those who described a feeling of being trapped, as though something invisible was pressing them down, preventing them from leaving. But it's not just the living who experience these strange occurrences. Paranormal investigators, equipped with the latest tools, have ventured into Highgate Cemetery in search of proof of the supernatural. They speak of hearing strange voices, whispers that come from nowhere, the faintest echoes of conversations long past. Some investigators have claimed to feel an intense, overwhelming sensation of fear, a terror so palpable that it consumes their every thought. Despite the growing number of encounters, no one can say for certain what truly haunts Highgate Cemetery. Is it the restless spirits of the many who were buried here, unable to find peace? When night falls and the shadows grow long, the true nature of Highgate reveals itself, a place that remains as dangerous as it is mysterious, a place where the past is never truly gone. And so, the question remains, what truly waits in the darkness of Highgate Cemetery? Is it the souls of the departed, or is it something older, something far more malevolent, that continues to walk the earth, hidden in the shadows of this ancient burial ground? St. Mary's Churchyard, Bristol. Tucked away in the heart of Bristol, St. Mary's Churchyard stands as a forgotten relic from centuries past. Its grave markers, worn by time and weather, lean like tired sentinels, quietly watching over the dead. The air around the churchyard is thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying stone. Trees, their gnarled limbs twisted like the hands of the long dead, sway overhead, casting strange, elongated shadows over the graves below. On a quiet day, when the usual bustle of the city seems far away, the the cemetery feels frozen in time, trapped between two worlds. The atmosphere here is different. There's an unnatural stillness that clings to the space, a heavy silence that makes even the softest footsteps seem intrusive. The occasional rustle of leaves is drowned out by a deeper, almost imperceptible sound, the sound of something waiting, something watching. And as the day slowly fades into dusk, the light seems to change. The sky turns a dull grayish hue, and the shadows stretch deeper, longer, taking on a life of their own. But it is not just the setting that makes St. Mary's Churchyard so unsettling. It is the stories that have been passed down through the years. Stories of ghostly apparitions, of shadowy figures walking among the gravestones, of a presence that has never fully left. Local legends tell of a mysterious figure seen drifting through the graves after dark, a woman dressed in black, her face obscured, her footsteps silent on the earth. Her presence has been felt by more than one visitor, though none have been able to explain who she might be or what she seeks. The churchyard itself dates back to medieval times, a place of peace and reflection for the people of Bristol. It was originally built as part of St. Mary's Church, which was founded in the 12th century. In its early days, the graveyard was a sacred space where families could lay their loved ones to rest, a space connected to both the divine and the earthly. As the centuries passed, however, the ground grew crowded with the dead. The churchyard became a final resting place for both the rich and the poor, the nameless and the renowned. But with every passing year, as more souls were laid to rest, the cemetery began to shift. It became more than just a resting place. It became a home for something darker, something that clung to the bones of the earth. In the 18th century, the churchyard saw its share of tragedy. Plagues and disease swept through the area, and many of the graves hold the remains of those whose lives were cut short by the ravages of illness. The very soil here seems soaked in sorrow, sorrow that refuses to fade, sorrow that is still felt by those who dare to visit after dark. It is said that when the wind blows through the cemetery at night, you can hear the faint whispers of the dead, carried on the breeze like a warning. It is not just the stories that make St. Mary's so terrifying. It's the experiences of those who have dared to walk among the graves. There are reports from several visitors who, while walking through the churchyard, have felt an unnerving presence behind them. Some have even heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, following them, though when they turned around, no one was there. The sensation of being watched is common among those who enter after dark. There's an oppressive weight to the air. One chilling account comes from a man who, during a late-night walk, reported seeing a figure standing near one of the older graves. At first, he thought it was a trick of the light, but as he drew closer, the figure remained, tall, motionless, and draped in black. The man, feeling a sudden coldness sweep over him, tried to approach, but the figure vanished into the mist before his eyes, leaving only the lingering sensation of dread. It was as though something from the past had stirred, something ancient and restless, bound to the cemetery by grief or perhaps unfinished business. The most disturbing accounts, however, are those that come from the churchyard's most famous resident, the Lady in Black. For generations, locals have spoken of a woman, her face always hidden by a veil, her movements graceful and hauntingly slow, who appears at dusk. She is seen walking between the graves, pausing to linger by certain markers, as if paying respects to the dead. But she is no ordinary mourner. Those who have encountered her describe a feeling of unease. Something isn't quite right about her presence. Some claim that she is a spirit, forever bound to the earth, unable to leave. Is the lady in black a lost soul, forever tied to the graveyard she haunts? Whatever the truth, she is just one piece of the puzzle that makes St. Mary's Churchyard one of the most unsettling places in Bristol. There is a palpable sense of something lingering in the air, something that won't let go, something that waits. As you stand at the edge of St. Mary's Churchyard, looking at the broken tombstones and listening to the rustling of the trees, it's hard not to wonder, what is it that still lingers here? Is it the souls of the dead, trapped in this forsaken place? Or is it something darker, a force that continues to feed off the grief and loss that fill this space? The answers, like the shadows themselves, remain elusive, slipping just beyond reach. And so, the cemetery stands, silent, watchful, and eternal, its secrets hidden beneath the cold stone and overgrown ivy, waiting to be uncovered, or perhaps never to be known. Greyfriars Kirkyard, Edinburgh. Nestled within the heart of Edinburgh, hidden behind the ancient stone walls of the old town, lies Greyfriars Kirkyard, a place where history and the supernatural collide with terrifying consequence. To the unknowing visitor, it may appear as just another historic burial ground, filled with crumbling gravestones and time-worn monuments. But beneath its centuries-old surface, Greyfriars is a place steeped in both legend and terror, a place where restless spirits stir and a malevolent force, believed to be centuries old, continues to haunt the living. Greyfriars Kirkyard, founded in 1561, has long been a sacred space, its grounds home to some of Edinburgh's most prominent figures. The cemetery is known for its beautiful, albeit eerie, gravestones, some worn away by the passage of time, others standing tall and proud, etched with the names of the city's most celebrated citizens. But it is not the tombs of the famous that draw the most attention here. It is the dark legend that has become entwined with its very stones, a legend that has captured the imagination of all who hear it. In the 17th century, Greyfriars Kirkyard became infamous for its connection to the macabre tale of the Mackenzie poltergeist, a malevolent spirit believed to be one of the most violent and powerful paranormal entities in the world. The legend begins with George Mackenzie, a 17th century lawyer and a notorious figure in Edinburgh's history. Known for his cruel treatment of the Scottish Covenanters, those who resisted the English crown during the religious conflicts of the time, Mackenzie became infamous for imprisoning, torturing, and executing those who dared oppose him. He was a man of great power, and even in death, it seemed that he refused to let go of his influence. Mackenzie's tomb lies at the heart of Greyfriars Kirkyard, an imposing structure that stands as a reminder of his dark legacy. It is here, in this hallowed ground, that the Mackenzie poltergeist was born. The story goes that in the 1990s, a group of vandals broke into Mackenzie's tomb, disturbing his final resting place. What followed was nothing short of terrifying. Since that fateful day, there have been numerous reports of violent paranormal activity in the cemetery, accounts so chilling that they have caused many to flee in terror. Visitors to the graveyard have reported being physically attacked by unseen forces. Sudden pushes, scratches, and bruises appearing out of nowhere. Others describe an overwhelming sense of dread that washes over them when they approach Mackenzie's tomb. The air grows colder, and a heavy, suffocating silence fills the space. Some even claim to have felt their very breath taken from them, as if an invisible hand is clutching their throat. One of the most famous accounts came from a group of ghost hunters who ventured into Greyfriars Kirkyard to investigate the growing number of reports surrounding the Mackenzie poltergeist. Armed with cameras and equipment, they made their way to the tomb of George Mackenzie. As they approached the crypt, the temperature dropped dramatically, the air thickening with an unearthly chill. Within moments, one of the investigators, a seasoned professional, reported feeling an intense pressure on his chest. He described the sensation as though an unseen force was trying to crush the life out of him. Many have experienced something even more unsettling, the feeling of being watched. One woman, visiting the graveyard with a group of friends, described how, as they walked along the old cobblestone paths, the oppressive silence seemed to shift. She could feel eyes on her, as if someone, or something, was watching from the shadows between the gravestones. When she turned, there was nothing there, only the broken monuments and the crumbling walls of the old cemetery. But the feeling lingered, following her as she moved deeper into the graveyard. Greyfriars Kirkyard is a place where the past is alive, where the dead are not at rest. The Mackenzie poltergeist is not the only entity believed to haunt the cemetery. Many visitors have reported hearing strange noises, whispers, moans, and even the sound of footsteps echoing through the empty cemetery at night. Some claim that the sounds seem to follow them, growing louder as they walk, only to disappear when they stop to listen. It's as though the spirits of the past are trying to make contact, reaching out from beyond the grave, desperate to be heard. The cemetery's most active areas seem to be near Mackenzie's tomb, but there are other spots within Greyfriars that have earned a reputation for being particularly haunted. The Covenanters' prison, located near the rear of the cemetery, is one such place. This section of the graveyard was once used to imprison the Covenanters, those who resisted the English government's attempts to impose Anglicanism on Scotland. Many died here, some of disease, others of starvation. Visitors to the Covenanters' prison have reported feeling a sense of extreme despair as they pass through the area, as though the spirits of those who perished there are still trapped, unable to escape their suffering. Greyfriars Kirkyard is a place where the dead refuse to stay silent. It is a place where history and the supernatural meet, creating a haunting tapestry of terror that is felt by all who enter. And while the tales of the Mackenzie poltergeist are the most famous, there are countless others, stories of whispers in the dark, of cold hands that brush against the living, of figures that appear from nowhere and vanish before your very eyes. What truly haunts Greyfriars? What forces, both human and otherworldly, continue to linger among the gravestones, waiting for the next soul to wander too close? The answers, like the spirits of Greyfriars, remain shrouded in mystery. Bournemouth Cemetery. Tucked away in the quiet town of Bournemouth lies a cemetery that on the surface seems like any other. Yet, beneath its serene exterior, it holds a darker presence, a place where the veil between the living and the dead appears to thin, and where the boundary between the known and the unknown becomes disturbingly blurred. Bournemouth Cemetery is not the grand historical site that attracts tourists or paranormal enthusiasts like its more famous counterparts, but those who have ventured here after nightfall speak of an unnerving atmosphere that hangs in the air, a feeling of being watched, followed, even stalked. The cemetery, which dates back to the 19th century, sits on the edge of town, its winding paths lined with old, weathered tombstones. As dusk falls and the evening mist rolls in, the cemetery takes on a life of its own. The tall, ancient trees creak in the wind, their gnarled branches twisting like skeletal fingers reaching out from the grave. Though it's not as well known for paranormal activity as other graveyards, there's something about Bournemouth Cemetery that unsettles those who enter after dark. There are no grand legends or famous spirits tied to the site, but what visitors report is far more subtle and perhaps even more terrifying. Strange sounds, footsteps that crunch along the gravel pathways when no one is around, soft whispers carried by the wind, distant moans that seem to echo from the earth itself. One visitor, walking alone through the cemetery late one evening, described the sensation of being constantly followed. At first, it was the sound of footsteps behind them, soft but distinct, in sync with their own. But when they turned, there was no one there. Some say it's just the tricks of the light, the dark playing tricks on the mind. But for those who have walked these paths at night, the line between reality and the supernatural begins to blur. It is the mystery of Bournemouth Cemetery that lingers in the air long after the visitor has left. No one can say for sure what haunts this place, but the strange occurrences continue to be reported. Perhaps it is the restless spirits of those buried here, still trapped between the realms of the living and the dead. Or perhaps it's something far darker, a presence that has made its home among the graves, waiting for the next soul brave enough to walk its paths. As the night deepens and the fog begins to settle, one thing remains clear. Bournemouth Cemetery is a place where the dead refuse to stay silent. Tantallon Castle Graveyard, Scotland. On the rugged coastline of Scotland, where the sea crashes violently against jagged cliffs, stands the ancient and formidable ruins of Tantallon Castle. Once the home of the powerful Douglases, it has long been a symbol of Scotland's turbulent past, of battles fought, lives lost, and power contested. Its grounds are scattered with worn gravestones, some weathered by time, others broken and half submerged in the earth. The graveyard's bleak beauty is as striking as it is eerie, an unsettling stillness hanging over the graves, a reminder of the past that refuses to die. It is easy to imagine that the souls buried here, particularly those lost in the violent battles that marked Scotland's medieval history, might not rest easily. Tantallon Castle itself was the site of many such conflicts, battles where blood was spilled, where men were slaughtered on the rocky slopes of the cliffs. The ground here is soaked with history, with the very weight of violence and death that has permeated the castle's legacy. Yet, it is not just the dead who haunt this graveyard. Many who have walked its desolate grounds after dark have spoken of a presence, something ancient, something tied to the land itself. Visitors to the graveyard have reported seeing figures move among the tombstones, their shapes barely visible in the dim light of dusk. These shadowy figures appear in the corner of one's eye, quick, fleeting, always just out of reach. One particularly chilling encounter occurred when a lone traveler, curious about the cemetery's reputation, ventured into the graveyard late one evening. As the sun dipped below the horizon and the first stars began to prick the sky, the traveler stood before one of the oldest graves, an unmarked stone that bore no name, only the faintest of carvings. The wind howled through the trees, and the traveler, feeling an inexplicable pull, knelt to inspect the grave more closely. The traveler stood, heart racing, as a sudden coldness enveloped them. Their breath fogged in the air, and a deep sense of dread filled the pit of their stomach. From the corner of their eye, they saw movement. Someone was standing between the gravestones. The figure was tall, dressed in what appeared to be a dark, tattered cloak, their face hidden in shadow. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the figure vanished without a trace. The traveler bolted from the graveyard, never looking back, the chilling sensation of being watched following them long after they had left the grounds. The figure, though, was not the only spectre that haunts this place. Tantallon Castle Graveyard is also home to the restless spirits of soldiers, many of whom fell during the castle's many sieges. Those who have ventured near the walls of the castle have reported hearing the faint sounds of armor clanking and the distant cries of battle, echoes of violence long past. The sound of horses' hooves, too, can sometimes be heard, galloping across the stones, as though the dead are forever caught in the final moments of the castle's many assaults. And then there are the shadows, not just the fleeting shapes glimpsed in the corner of one's eye, but darker, more oppressive figures. Some say the spirits of soldiers who died in battle still walk these paths, forever guarding the castle they once called home. The question remains, what is it that haunts the graveyard of Tantallon Castle? Is it the restless souls of soldiers, forever caught in the throes of battle? Or is it something older, something tied to the land itself, a force that has lingered for centuries, waiting for the next soul to venture too close? Tantallon Castle Graveyard stands as a reminder that history is never truly gone. The past, with all its bloodshed and loss, lingers here in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered, or perhaps left undisturbed. Bramshott Cemetery, Hampshire. Nestled deep in the rolling countryside of Hampshire lies Bramshott Cemetery, a quiet, seemingly unassuming burial ground that holds an unsettling presence just beneath the surface. But Bramshott is no ordinary cemetery. It is a place where the boundary between the living and the dead feels alarmingly thin. A place where the echoes of the past refuse to fade, and the spirits of soldiers long gone still walk. Bramshott Cemetery is perhaps most famous for its ties to the First World War. It serves as the final resting place for hundreds of soldiers who perished in the trenches, their lives cut short by the horrors of war. The site is a mixture of both military and civilian graves, each marker a silent testament to the lives lost, the stories untold. Yet, while many cemeteries carry the weight of history, Bramshott carries something else, a haunting, a presence that lingers in the air, waiting for the next visitor to feel its grasp, is soaked in sorrow and loss. The grounds hold the remains of soldiers who died during the brutal battles of the Great War. Many of these soldiers were young men, their lives taken before they could experience the full span of life. Some were casualties of the infamous Somme offensive. Others perished from wounds, disease, or exhaustion. The cemetery is dotted with simple stone markers, each one telling the story of a young life extinguished too soon. But it is not just the sorrow of the soldiers' deaths that fills the air here. It is the tragedy of lives unfulfilled, the lingering regrets, the untold stories of battles both on the front lines and within the hearts of those who remain. Those who have ventured into Bramshott Cemetery at night have reported a strange sensation. But as you walk further into the cemetery, the sensation intensifies. It's as if the very air has thickened, heavy with the weight of those who have come before you. The stones, though weathered and worn, seem to pulse with a strange energy, as though the dead are not so silent as we think. Many visitors to Bramshott Cemetery have reported hearing the unmistakable sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, and echoing in the stillness. It's not just the sound of footsteps, though. There are reports of voices, distant, almost indistinguishable whispers that float on the wind, as if the soldiers buried here are trying to communicate. One particularly chilling encounter occurred when a visitor, walking alone through the cemetery, reported feeling an overwhelming sense of being drawn toward a specific grave. It was a simple marker, a modest stone engraved with the name of a soldier who had fallen during the war. As the visitor stood before the grave, they felt an intense pressure building around them, an invisible force pulling them closer, urging them to stay. Then, without warning, a gust of wind swept through the cemetery, sending leaves spiraling into the air. The visitor, overcome with a deep sense of dread, quickly turned to leave, but as they walked away, they heard the faint sound of footsteps following them, growing louder with each step. When they turned to look, there was no one there, only the graves, silent in the moonlight. It is not just the ghostly footsteps or the cold, lingering presence that haunts Bramshott Cemetery. Some claim to have seen figures moving between the tombstones, shadows flickering in the corner of their eyes, always just out of reach. These figures, often described as soldiers in worn uniforms, appear and disappear without warning, leaving nothing but a chill in the air. Others have reported the sensation of being touched, cold, clammy hands brushing against their shoulders or their backs, though there is never anyone around. Is it the restless souls of the soldiers who fought and died in the trenches, still bound to this earth, unable to find peace? Or is there something deeper at play here, a force that feeds on the sorrow and grief of those who perished too young, something darker that clings to the land itself? The answers are elusive, slipping through the cracks of time, like the shadows that move between the gravestones. What is certain is that Bramshott Cemetery is a place where the dead do not rest in silence. It is a place where the past refuses to be forgotten, where the echoes of war continue to haunt the living. And as you leave the cemetery, walking back into the comfort of the living world, you can't help but wonder, what if the footsteps, the whispers, and the shadows are not just remnants of the past? What if they are something far more present, waiting for the next soul brave enough to listen? From dark figures haunting ancient tombstones to the unsettling sounds of ghostly footsteps, these graveyards prove that death is not always the end. Are these restless spirits simply lost, or do they carry with them untold stories from the past? Next time you find yourself in one of these haunted cemeteries, think twice before you walk too far into the shadows. You never know who or what might be watching from beyond.